WD, and more. You'll also be hearing more about a couple of national town halls broadcasting live from Los Angeles, to which you will be invited. And we'll be rolling out a robust social media campaign on all our platforms, as well as an outdoor media campaign, all designed to educate, enlighten, and empower you in our fight for climate justice.
We want cleaner air.
Caring about the community means caring about the climate. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that we really can change the world if we care enough. 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 If we care enough.
What up, y'all? Yeah, soundtrack, what's poppin', baby? Woo! If y'all ain't know, I go by the name of Lupe Fiasco, representing that first and 15. Yeah, and this one right here, I dedicate this one right here to all my homies out there grinding. You know what I'm saying?
I'm Tavis Smiley, and I love Lupe Fiasco. I'm going to talk to a different Lupe in this hour. But Miles, my board op, always trying to find a way to be cute. He knows we're talking to a guy named Lupe, so he starts with Lupe Fiasco. But any excuse to play Lupe Fiasco is a good excuse. Love that brother. I haven't seen Lupe in a while. He needs to put some new stuff out. But love the genius, the artistic genius of one Lupe Fiasco. I'll introduce my Lupe in this hour, along with Hunter, in a moment. First, some breaking news in case you just tuned in. Well, first I should tell you, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm delighted to have you hanging out with us today on our program. What an amazing first hour we just had, talking about self-immolation. If you missed any part of that conversation, make sure you check out the podcast when it's posted later today. But the very notion of self-immolation as an act, an extreme act to be sure, the ultimate act to be sure, of protest. But there is a long history of self-immolation as an act of protest, chasing peace in this country and indeed around the world, as we established in that last hour. Robert McNamara, Defense Secretary during the Vietnam War, eventually came to realize he was wrong about the Vietnam War, and part of what caused that to happen was a brother named Norman Morrison sat down his 1-year-old daughter, who was in his hands, in his arms, sat her down, and then self-immolated just outside the office of Robert McNamara, and it got his attention. And Aaron Bushnell's self-immolation days ago in front of the Israeli embassy has got our attention, and we spent an hour talking about self-immolation as an extreme act of protest in the name of peace. Made a distinction between suicide and sacrifice. They are not the same things. Check out the podcast if you missed the first hour. This hour is going to be great as we talk to two guests, two authors of a new book that I have been waiting to get into the thick of with them. But again, first some breaking news. In case you have not heard, we just announced this moments ago. Mitch McConnell will step down as the Senate Republican leader in November after a record run in the job. No person has ever served as Senate leader as long as Mitch McConnell has. So he's made history in that regard, made history in other ways that we ain't so happy about. But he has announced that after serving all these years, basically 2 decades, he is stepping down as Republican leader in the Senate. He turned 82 last week. We, of course, all know over the last year, we've seen him on a few occasions kind of freeze in public, freeze at the microphone, freeze while he's speaking. And so we know he has some health challenges, but he has announced that in November, he will be stepping down from his post as leader of Senate Republicans. That news breaking just a little while ago. And in case you did not hear the first hour of our show, we are pleased around here at the Tavis Smiley Show to have announced earlier today in the national media that we are expanding the syndication network that is Tavis Smiley. We are heard all across the country, of course, based here in L.A. on my home station, KBLA Talk 1580. But we announced today that we've done something that we're pretty excited about. We are happy to welcome WHCR 90.3 FM in New York City. We have cracked the Big Apple. So we thank WHCR 90.3 FM in New York City for carrying this program. We thank WOL 1480 AM in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., for adding this program. We thank WNOV 860 AM in Milwaukee, and we thank KJMC 89.3 FM in Des Moines. So the Tavis Smiley program is growing, and in less than 6 months of national syndication, it is a big, big deal. I say it with humility, but trust me on this. I've been at this for 30 years. When you're in syndication for less than 6 months and you've cracked the top 3, it's downhill from there. And so we are now heard in New York City, in Los Angeles, and in Chicago, where we've been for quite some time. And we're just delighted to announce today that New York City, Washington, D.C., Milwaukee, Des Moines, and others have picked up this program, and you can read more about it by going to our socials. But I want to just thank all those stations for carrying the Tavis Smiley program. I am humbled. I am grateful. In this hour, a conversation for the hour with reporters Hunter Walker and Lupe B. Lupin about their new book. It's called The Truce: Progressives, Centrist, and the Future of the Democratic Party. I just mentioned Mitch McConnell a moment ago and all that he has endured just in the last 4 years regarding his own party, all the ups and downs and the drama of with the advent of Donald Trump and his holding on as a Republican leader all that time. But we spend a lot of time talking about the GOP and the future of that party. I think the time is right now to have a conversation about the future of the Democratic Party. So here's this book, The Truce. It tells the inside story of the struggle between progressives and centrists inside the Democratic Party. As you know, I brand my work, I brand everything I do unapologetically progressive am I. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I am unapologetically progressive. This book then goes inside the struggle between progressives and centrists in the Democratic Party. Joe Biden was able to unite all these factions in the face of the threat of Donald Trump 4 years ago. But there's evidence everywhere, as I'm looking at it, that suggests that fragile peace is fraying. So the question is, can the fragile peace hold this time around? We know that Donald Trump is an existential threat to this country. Joe Biden keeps telling us, judge me against the alternative, not the almighty. But there's a struggle inside the Democratic Party. And the question again is, can this fragile peace hold this time around? I will commence my conversation with Hunter Walker and Lupe B. Lupin. My first question is going to be ask Lupe to tell me about that name, Lupe B. Lupin. I love it. We'll get a backstory on that name and then jump into the text you're listing, and I'm glad about it, to Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Do you support public education? More than 38,000 educators at United Teachers Los Angeles do too. Together, we have fought for a better public education for our students and communities, and having you on our side has been essential in our fight for better public schools. Together, we will continue to work for public schools with green spaces, more mental health staff, smaller class sizes at every grade level, and a higher investment in the Black Student Achievement Plan. We are UTLA, and you make us stronger. KBLA Talk 1580 is the exclusive media sponsor of this light of ours, activist photographers of the Civil Rights Movement. A dynamic new exhibition on view now at the Skirball Cultural Center in Los Angeles. This light of ours showcases more than 150 photos taken by movement insiders from diverse backgrounds that reveal the vital work undertaken by a broad coalition of organizers and everyday people whose collective action changed America. This light of ours is one of 3 temporary exhibitions currently on view at the Skirball, which together explore issues related to civil rights, immigration, and pluralism. Tickets and more information for all 3 exhibitions are available at skirball.org. That's skirball.org. SKIRBALL.org.
Who do you trust to get at the truth?
Tavis Smiley.
That's who. The conversation continues right now.
The conversation begins right now. I'm pleased to welcome Hunter Walker to this program. Hunter, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you doing, man?
Man, if I complained, I'd be an ingrate. I am doing well and delighted to have you on the program. Lupe B. Lupin, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for that intro. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, I'm glad to have you. Tell me the backstory of that name. I love the name, Lupe B. Lupin. How'd that come to be? I know your mom and daddy, of course, has something to do with it. Tell me about that name. It's really fascinating.
Well, you won't be surprised to hear that many of my conversations start out with explaining my name.
Yeah.
It's a Dutch name. It's actually been in my family for 8 generations. So we all have different middle names, but I'm Lupe Bush Lupin. My dad's Lupe Ridgway Lupin. My grandfather was Lupe Hodgson Lupin. And it goes back through 8 of us. So it's passed down from father to son like a little mild form of child abuse.
A mild form. I love that. A mild form of child abuse. Well, I love it, man. I tell you a funny story. When I was a kid, I hated my name. I hated the name Tavis. I don't know why my mama named me Tavis. And people call you Travis all the time. There's no R in it. So I hated my name Tavis. I was a big Michael Jackson, the Jackson 5. I loved them back then. So I love Michael Jackson so much. I wish my name had been Michael. I wanted my mama to call me Michael, not Tavis. And then as fate would have it, years go on, and I end up in this broadcast career on television and radio as an author and all the stuff that I've done. And I love my name, Tavis Smiley, because it stands out. Like, there is no other Tavis Smiley. And as a media personality, it kind of worked for me. So I hope that over the years you've grown to love Lupe B. Lupin, even though it may be a mild form of child abuse. I take your point. All right, let's jump straight in.
Tavis, if I could.
Sure.
If I could continue with the theme here, first off, there is only one Tavis Smiley. You're a legend. We're glad to be on with you. And, we wrote this book about the inside story of the struggle between Democrats and the left and the center of the party. And, I had to write it with Lupe because his name is not just Lupe Lupin. He's Lupe B. Scoopin. He gets all the info, and I'm glad you introduced us with Lupe Fiasco because the tale of this relationship between the left and the center has really been a story of kick, push, and away they go.
I love it. This is all too much. It is all too much, and I ain't even gotten to the book yet. So I love these guys. It's gonna be a great conversation, and I'm delighted to have Hunter and Lupe on this program talking about their new book. It's called The Truth. Let's jump right in. So I'll start with you, Hunter, and you guys can chime in as you will. But as I said a moment ago, it seems to me that Joe Biden either was lucky or good, you tell me, that he was able to unite these factions, progressives and centrists. He was able to unite these factions to defeat Donald Trump 4 years ago. I don't know if that fragile piece is going to hold. We'll get to that as we move through this hour. But let me just go backwards before we come forward, and that is with this question: how did Joe Biden pull this off 4 years ago? Again, was he just that good, or was he lucky to be running against a guy named Donald Trump?
Well, I think you're starting with a great question. Is Joe Biden lucky or good? Mm-hmm. Right? And our book, which aims to cover a story that frankly has not been told enough. Donald Trump has been such a unique figure in American history. He's such a threat to the American order as we know it that he tends to take up all of the oxygen in the room. And so we see so much reporting on what's been going on in the GOP, but at the same time, as much as Donald Trump was essentially putting the country through an identity crisis, the Democrats were having this identity crisis of their own. And we wanted to make sure that story was told as well. So when we kind of dug in, in our research, we found numbers really supporting the idea that the rift between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders is actually a big part of what got us Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. A decisive number of Democrats stayed home in the 2016 race, after that sort of fraught contest. And we're not the only ones who feel that way. In our reporting, we found that President Obama was consumed with this idea that split had, enabled the Trump presidency. And also, as you'll recall, Obama had backed Clinton in the 2016 race. What we found is that, Biden and his allies felt that Obama didn't, tell him not to run, but he pushed him to make the decision very quickly at a moment when Biden was dealing with the death of his son. So he felt kind of shooed off the stage. Now, the flip side to that is Biden tends to really take his time with those decisions. We saw that all play out with his announcement in the past year. Yep. But to answer your question about lucky or good, Biden's always trusted his political instincts. And in 2016, that culminated with this phone call that we report for the first time in the book. That is one of really the greatest I told you so moments in history. And it's 1:30 in the morning. Donald Trump has just won this shocking victory. Biden's vice president. He's in the Naval Observatory. He calls Obama at the White House. And according to all our sources, Biden said, "I told you, boss, people just don't like her." So Biden has always trusted his instincts. He's always felt he was underestimated. And he had some lingering bitterness about being underestimated in 2016. Fast forward to 2020, he gets in the race. He believes he's got this compelling message about the soul of the nation. He was very animated by Charlottesville, right? But I think people also forget Bernie Sanders came really close to winning. And, we report in the book how it was a lot closer than people even realize. I mean, the chaos in Iowa as the caucus app exploded was worse than I think anyone realized. The result was never clear, and it hurt Bernie uniquely because his campaign strategy was almost wholly based on at least having a definitive result of some type in Iowa, right? And so that really took him out. So Biden got really lucky with that. COVID, I think, made America really want someone familiar, and it also, knocked out Bernie's sort of young ground game, his army of volunteers, and that really did help Biden. Then, of course, once he secured the nomination, he very smartly did this work that we detail in the book to heal the rift that, Obama and others were so worried about in 2016. And he engaged in a lot of deft politics to, I think, put together his own version of the Obama coalition and defeat Donald Trump.
So is he good, is he lucky, or is he both?
I would say he's both. I mean, like anything else.
Yeah. Lupe, let me ask you this. So I love the frame. Hunter, thank you very much, my friend, for the frame you put us in. Hunter starts with 2016. He jumps to 2020. Let me jump now to 2024, and then we'll go back, Lupe. But the question in real time 2024 is whether or not we're going to see this time around what Hunter says we saw in 2016, where a lot of Democrats stayed home. I take you to Michigan, where that number of uncommitted votes shocked a lot of people. I hope it got Joe Biden's attention. The percentage of uncommitteds in Michigan, he didn't fall prey. He didn't fall down like Nikki Haley did to in Nevada, of course, to a ghost candidate doing better than she did. But the question is whether or not in 2024 we're going to see a repeat of 2016, where Democrats in a race that nobody wants, this sequel, are they going to stay home?
Well, it's a huge question, an important question, and I think one that we have to evaluate how deftly the Biden campaign practices politics over the next 8 months before Election Day. I do think that, as you said, it's a really fragile coalition. What we saw in 2020, as Hunter said, is that you really have to do the work to reach out to progressives and young people to try to stitch this coalition together. And we do see the tremendous strain that American foreign policy, particularly with regard to Israel and its war in Gaza, has put on elected Democrats' relationship with young voters and progressives. And Hunter and I were just talking about this before we got on the line with you. The predictions going into Michigan, I'm not sure anyone knew exactly what the turnout numbers would be, but people were talking about 10 or 20,000 people voting for uncommitted, and it ended up being more than six figures. So I think the Biden campaign has to take account of that. And I saw some comments from Biden advisors saying, we have to work to earn their votes after last night's results. So I get a sense that they do have their mind on this project. And I know from some of our conversations with sources in Obama's world that he's also been focused on young voters since early in the year. thinking about how to reach out to them. Obviously, he remains a key advisor to Biden. So I do think there's a clear indication from Michigan that there's work to be done here. And whether Biden's able to do that, well, he's got to navigate, the politics of Israel and his governing coalition and the world and foreign policy with other world leaders. It's a really challenging policy riddle to solve, but one that I think he has to solve because the politics are existential for him.
Has to solve and can solve are two different things, and I want to come back to this. We'll get back to the book in a second here, but since we're talking about Michigan and what happened yesterday, I think you're right, Lupe, that people were shocked, as I said earlier, by that number of those who voted for uncommitted. It has to ring a bell inside the Biden campaign, and I heard you say earlier, Lupe, that you've heard that they now know they need to earn those votes. I don't know that they can. And here's the frame. You guys are covering this stuff better than I do every day. This Arab American community in Michigan said weeks ago that he'd lost their vote. There is nothing many of them have said that he can do to earn their vote. Now, Rashida Tlaib has said we're going to vote uncommitted in the primary and we'll support Biden in the general. But because she said that doesn't mean everybody's going to do that. Number one, and that's just one issue. The other issue, as Hunter has already laid out, is that people could, in fact, stay home. So the question for either of you is whether or not, however deft Joe Biden is or has been, is he good enough at this point to earn their votes and to turn Michigan around? He only won it by 3 points the last time, Hunter.
Yeah, so I think you're alluding to what is the most important thing about this result that we're seeing in Michigan, this shocking result. I know in my conversations today that sort of people in Biden world are dismissing this. They're pointing, it's just 100,000 people. But the reality is there are no small numbers in Michigan.
Yeah, it's just 100,000 people. Get out of here. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Hunter.
Well, but also it's just 100,000 people in Michigan. Well, Michigan is only one of the most important swing states on the entire map.
Exactly.
Right? This is one of the handful of states where a small amount of, for example, 100,000 voters essentially delivered Biden the win. Right? We know that, the presidential election plays out in the Electoral College, and there's nothing more important for a Democrat than essentially, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and some combination of, Georgia and Arizona. Right. So you cannot dismiss this result. But more importantly, I think what readers of our book will find is we set the stage for why the anger that we're seeing about Biden's policies in Gaza is so dangerous for him. And what I mean is, we essentially track years of work that was done to heal what, again, we think might have been a decisive rift in 2016 within the Democratic Party. Biden saw that. Biden really addressed it. His young voter numbers surpassed some of what Obama did. He had really strong support in communities of color. That is essentially the coalition that helps Democrats defeat the advantage Republicans have in the Electoral College, right? What we're seeing now is that very coalition is exactly who is up in arms about Gaza.
Yeah.
Young people, according to some polls, 3/4 of them disapprove of, how Joe Biden has handled the situation in Gaza. Meanwhile, I've been very focused on the racial issue here, and there isn't a ton of polling publicly on sort of race and Gaza. I can tell you anecdotally, and I'm sure you've seen something similar, people of color are disproportionately upset and united in their opposition to this issue.
That's right.
And I would say that includes Arabs, obviously, but it also includes the black community. We've seen reporting from the Times about how black leaders are up in arms, but it also, in my experience, includes Latinos, right? And I was talking to a progressive operative this morning who was telling me that he's seen non-public polling data in congressional districts, Democratic districts, and the numbers of Arab voters and black voters who are angry about Gaza and potentially considering not voting for Biden are, as he said to me, quote unquote, stark. Wow. Furthermore, he'd specifically seen focus group data in Philadelphia, which again, this is Pennsylvania, one of these key states, showing that black voters are extremely upset about Gaza. So to bring it back to your frame, Tavis, is Biden lucky or good? He's been lucky and good, but Gaza was bad luck for him that this situation erupted in Israel, and I'm not sure his handling of it has had sort of the astuteness that we've seen so far.
I've got 2 minutes here before we come forward, but let me just get this started, Lupe, and you can continue on the other side. But let me get you going here, though. You heard your colleague, your co-author, Hunter, mentioned progressives a moment ago. The title of the book is The Truce, Progressives, Centrists, and the Future of the Democratic Party. I don't know. I speak now as a progressive, Lupe. I don't know if we have been gutted, if we are fatigued, if we feel exploited, or frankly, if we are defeated. What I do know is that the progressives in Congress came out pretty quickly to endorse Joe Biden. My head is still spinning on how fast the aforementioned Bernie Sanders, how fast AOC, how fast these progressives lined up to endorse Joe Biden. I still don't know how to process that. You wrote the book. How do I process that, Lupe?
Well, it surprised us too, and we were in the process of looking around for who was going to be the progressive primary candidate in 2024, and I think it is a testament to the work that was done in 2020 that most progressive leaders, all the progressive leaders in Congress, chose not to challenge Joe Biden in this 2024 race. And I think those decisions are really taken, at least as I understand it, really at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, and before we really get into this Israel and Gaza war. And so I think you're seeing the result of a political coalition that, number one, was built in 2020 and was really powerfully, successful in a lot of ways in 2022, 2021, 2022, mostly 2022, where they, passed a bunch of legislation, got a lot of progressive goals accomplished, but not as many as obviously progressives would have hoped, but they got a lot done. And then they had a historically good midterm result, right, not in New York, and we detail that in our book, but around the country, you see lots of Democrats and progressives winning their races and doing well.
Let me pause there for a second. I hate to cut you off, Lupe. When we come forward, I'll come right back to this. The book is called The Truce, Progressives, Centrists, and the Future of the Democratic Party. The authors of that book are Hunter Walker and Lupe B. Lupin, who I am honored to have on Tavis Smiley right now.
Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. In Illinois, a former employee of a West Suburban Elmhurst auto dealership is accusing his ex-employer of racial discrimination. Andre Jennings says that he was fired from his job as a salesman at Ed Napleton's Elmhurst Imports Kia in April of 2022. The suit alleges the plaintiff was routinely referred to by a racial slur by his supervisor at the dealership and that he was paid less than his white colleagues. Over 380,000 Toyota Tacoma trucks in the U.S. are being recalled due to an increased risk of crashing. Toyota announced the recall Tuesday, saying welding debris left on the rear axle assembly can cause retaining nuts to loosen and fall off. It could cause a part to separate from the axle, impacting the vehicle's stability and how it brakes. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers and Clippers jumping up tonight at Crypto.com. First game for both teams in 3 days. Both teams are also 1-2 since the All-Star break. Important game for the Lakers at 31-28. The Lakers are 2.5 games out of the playoffs with 23 games left in the regular season. They need to get on the road pretty quick. The Clippers won't have Paul George tonight. He's missing his second straight game with a sore left knee. The Clippers are the home team. 7 p.m. tip-off on ESPN. Top 5 men's college basketball teams in this week's AP poll: Houston, Purdue, UConn, Tennessee, and Marquette. Dodgers fans got a treat yesterday. Shohei Ohtani hit a 2-run homer in his first game with his new team. It's only spring training, but this is what Dodgers fans want to see from a guy with a 10-year, $700 million contract. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. Recently, the Washington Post ran a major story which in sum reveals that racial discrimination in jury selection persists in America. Most often, the practice occurs through a legal tactic called peremptory challenge, which allows an attorney to strike a potential juror without having to state a reason. In the 1986 Batson Doctrine, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the use of peremptory challenges to exclude potential jurors solely based on their race violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. By the way, the late great Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall despised peremptory challenges. New data in the Washington Post story underscores that nearly 40 years after the Batson decision, the problem remains widespread. One study in the Deep South found that black jurors are being challenged and dismissed at double and triple the rates of other prospective jurors. Bottom line, it's racist, it's wrong, and it's pervasive, even as research shows that racially diverse juries spend more time deliberating, make fewer errors, and can result in fairer trials. One of the arguments in the Ninth Circuit appeal, brought by former LA City Councilman Mark Ridley Thomas, is about violation of that Batson Doctrine. In its case against MRT, the U.S. Attorney's Office struck black women from the jury pool based on demeanor and employment status, a clear violation of the law. A long list of high-profile black law professors, historians, and justice centers have now filed amicus briefs in support of MRT's position. But the irony of a black elected official who for more than 3 decades represented the best interests of his black constituents, having black women voters struck from his jury pool is repugnant and morally wrong. So much for being judged by a jury of your peers. MRT's legal team argues correctly in its filing that given well-established law and legal principles set forth by the Supreme Court, Ninth Circuit, and state courts and legislatures, the Ninth Circuit should likewise reaffirm and clearly state that applying facially neutral justifications in discriminatory ways to target black women and other protected groups presumptively violates Batson. I couldn't agree more. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Tavis Smiley. We welcome your comments.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Hunter Walker and Lupe B. Lupin, authors of the book The Truce, Progressive Centrists and the Future of the Democratic Party. The timing couldn't be more propitious for a conversation about the future of the Democratic Party as everybody's talking about the Republican Party. In case you've not heard, Mitch McConnell has announced today he is stepping down as Senate Republican leader in November. So there's big news out of Washington in the U.S. Senate. Mitch McConnell stepping down in November after serving longer than anybody else as a leader in the United States Senate. Back to our conversation now about the truce. So, Lupe, you were talking about, you were answering my question about progressives and how they got in line so quickly. Bernie Sanders, AOC, and others got in line so quickly behind Joe Biden. Made my head spin. I didn't know what to expect, but I didn't expect them to come out as quickly as they did. I was thinking during that break, though, about two things. One, as you both know, being brilliant reporters, it's hard to find. It's like they're an endangered species. Hard to find a moderate Republican these days. Everybody's rabid. Everybody's to the wall. Everybody's part of the MAGA group. So it's hard these days to really find moderate Republicans. I am wondering about the future of people like me, the future of progressives in this country vis-a-vis the Democratic Party. Lupe, are we going to end up an endangered species?
Well, personally, I hope not. I think progressives have a lot to contribute to the Democratic Party, and I think we've seen a lot of vibrancy in the progressive movement over the last, 6 years. Starting in 2018 with the congressional elections and carrying through to 2022. I think there are a lot of young progressive leaders in the Democratic Party, and I don't see them going anywhere. I was thinking over the break too about my answer to your question. I think what I'd said was that there was a lot of work done in 2020 to bind this coalition together. And it is an exercise in coalition politics, one that, I think the Democratic leaders had a lot to do with and can take a lot of credit for, particularly Joe Biden's first chief of staff, Ron Klain, someone who's not there anymore in the White House. But it's also, a question of who your opposition is. And I think when you engage in coalition politics, your willingness to continue doing it is a question of your sort of pain threshold, dealing with people who you don't agree with on every issue and in the way that they act. And that there's, I think, a really high pain threshold for Democrats right now because it didn't come as a shock to anyone that the Republicans are going to nominate Donald Trump to be their candidate for president in this presidential cycle. And I don't think any Democrats, progressives, centrists, anyone who identifies with the Democratic Party wants to see Donald Trump back in office.
Yep. So Hunter, let me come to you on this piece because again, the subtitle of the book is Progressives, Centrist, and the Future of the Democratic Party. Lupe and I have just engaged in dialogue, of course, about the progressive piece of this. I want to come to the centrist piece, and you took us back to 2016 in your first response, Hunter, framing how this book comes to be and what we're talking about in your book, The Truce. I want to go back before 2016 and ask a very simple question. I know as a brilliant reporter, you'll recall this. You remember that guy named Bill Clinton and the DLC? So what's Bill Clinton got to do with this conversation about centrist and the future of the Democratic Party?
So, I think Bill Clinton is a really great example of what is a larger phenomenon here, right? Which is, if you ask Bill Clinton and Hillary, and I think we saw this play out certainly in 2016 and a little bit since, they see themselves as progressives, right? And certainly if we go back to, 1992, there was a lot of progressive excitement around Bill Clinton. And I think one of the issues here is this term progressive, right? A lot of people feel entitled to the term, and not necessarily all of them are in agreement. There are a lot of people who, I think South Carolina is a really great example. We've seen sort of the Bernie Sanders wing bristle about South Carolina being moved up the primary calendar. Meanwhile, that is in the primary at least a 70% black electorate. The black church community in South Carolina certainly sees themselves as staunch progressives, and they've bled and fought to get there, right? So I think the Democrats are a much more diverse party than the Republicans, demographically and ideologically at this point. You see everything from socialists on up to your sort of Clinton New Democrats, and then your, Josh Gottheimer and Joe Manchin, these folks we termed the radical centrists that kind of scuttled the Joe Biden agenda. And I think part of what makes Joe Biden interesting, he was in the Senate for such a long time. He is a 50-year veteran of politics. In many ways, he is more from the establishment Clinton wing of the Democratic Party, except at the same time, he problematizes that notion a bit, particularly on the economic front with his sympathies towards unions. He is surprisingly progressive. And then, yet, a progressive said to me the other day, Joe Biden has been to the left of Obama on everything except Israel. Right. And this issue is coming up for him. So I think by and large, what we're seeing is that, for Republicans, when you have a largely white party that is increasingly taking an authoritarian bent under Trump, going with the strongman model, they are likely to get in line behind a single leader. They are likely to follow orders. That is conservative by nature. And again, it's easier when you have a homogenous nationalistic group and message. Right? Democrats have to bring together this complex coalition that includes your Arabs in Detroit and your, young people in colleges all around the country and black churches in the South. That is going to be harder work. And that is why it is a little bit more delicate for Biden. But as you've alluded to a bunch of times in this conversation, Tavis, whatever problems he might have, his best ally in this may be Trump. Because the one thing I think these Democrats of all various stripes can agree on, from socialists on the way to the middle, is that Trump is an existential threat. And he's brought that unity that we saw when sort of all these potential primary challengers to Joe Biden stepped down this year. And if Joe Biden is going to win again, I think he's going to need to be good again. He's going to need luck again. But he will also need Democrats to unite around their fear of Trump.
Let me ask you very quickly, and we'll continue when we come forward. For all that Joe Biden is having said about him, for all the pushback he's getting, for the uncommitted vote in Michigan, for people not liking his policy regarding Israel and Hamas, for not getting voting rights passed in the Senate, not getting meaningful police reform passed in the Senate, for all the stories about black men who are going to vote for Donald Trump and not vote for Joe Biden, for all of that, when all is said and done, to your point, so long as Trump is the nominee, so long as Trump represents that existential threat that we've referred to 2 or 3 times now, one could argue that Joe Biden still keeps this coalition together because Trump is the guy running against him. You buy that argument?
I mean, it's certainly possible. We've seen him do it once before, but I think, there are some unique signs of strain. Right. And one I would point out that we haven't discussed as much is that Latino voters. Yeah. Trump has been improving his margins with them continually, even though they are, perhaps the demographic most explicitly targeted by him. Yeah. So there's unique strain.
No, there are some strains, no question about it. Let me just say this before we come forward. There's no way. I love Bill Clinton. I love Hillary. I consider them both personal friends. Over many years. And there's no way that Bill Clinton or Hillary is a progressive. They're just not progressives. You cannot oversee moving the Democratic Party to the middle. You can't be the guy behind the Democratic Leadership Council, the DLC, and at the same time call yourself a progressive. The word is being bastardized in a variety of ways, and we should perhaps at a later time talk about what it means to be a true progressive. But Bill Clinton and Hillary ain't progressives. I love them, but that ain't what they are. When we come forward, we'll talk about the issue that Hunter raised a moment ago about race. You can't talk about the truce, progressives, centrists, and the future of the Democratic Party without talking about the Democratic Party's most loyal base, black folk. We'll talk about it on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on! What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do Black history every single day. In fact, as the only Black talk radio station west of the Mississippi, we are Black history. Our annual Black History Month luncheon is fast approaching, and we want to be sure to give you ample time to get your company, organization, church, or group to join us at this year's celebration on the last day of the month, Thursday, February 29th at noon. Last year, we honored iconic local Black media personalities, including Pat Harvey, Jim Hill, Mark Brown, Beverly White, Sandy Banks, and Pat Prescott, and raised $20,000 in scholarships. This year, we're honoring Black Hollywood creatives who have used their artistic genius as climate justice champions. At this year's luncheon, we will be showcasing and sharing their inspiring work on our big screen. Plus, a scrumptious meal, live music, great company, and lots of fun with your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts. So contact us today at info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. We hope to see you Thursday, February 29th as we close out Black History Month. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black.
Art tells a story, your story, and inspires others in your community to do the same. This Black History Month, AARP is celebrating the undeniable impact and contributions of Black art and artists everywhere. We're thrilled to celebrate these creators over 50. Through their work and persistence, they make society a better place by bringing us all closer together. Learn more at aarp.org/Black Community.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
I don't need to color this question too much, pardon the pun, Lupe and Hunter, but you can't talk about the future of the Democratic Party without talking about Black folk. Take it away, somebody.
Well, you're absolutely right.
So, go ahead.
There's no Democratic Party without the Black vote. But I'll let Hunter go ahead. Apologies, I jumped in on that one too early.
Well, no, I just want to go back to what you were saying before, Tavis, that I think is really interesting, talking about the move to the middle with Bill Clinton. And I would argue, that it stretches back even a little bit further than that. If you look at sort of where Democrats and where the left were in the 30s, it was a very union-centric thing. The communist and socialist movement had legit constituencies that I think we only saw them start to approach again in 2018, but it's still not there. And, in FDR, you had a president who, by and large, he looks almost like a squad member, to use today's parlance, right? And what I think is interesting is that when it comes to the Black community, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, I think, started to get more into this economic populism after, addressing sort of the dire, civil rights threat that was facing their community. They started to kind of bring that conversation into the economic arena. I would argue personally that's when they became more of a threat to the powers that be. And I think we're only beginning to know about what really happened there. I see the work Ben Crump is doing. Yeah. I think a lot more is coming on that front. But, this is essentially sort of the what I would almost term the Richard Wright problem, if you will, where kind of the white left has had trouble building bridges to the Black community and sort of tying that economic leftism, that class consciousness with civil rights and sort of making a unified coalition here. And, where I've seen that is like in 2016 on the trail, Bernie had trouble reaching out to Black voters in South Carolina because his pitch wasn't culturally fluent.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big question, is sort of how Democrats can bring together the minority coalition and sort of the socialist left, which does tend to be whiter. And we've tracked that in our book, where we sort of look at the rise of AOC and we look at what's going on in New York, where the DSA and these other activists have had a little bit of trouble speaking to communities of color and connecting with them.
Let me just say this before I come forward here. Any white guy who in Black History Month or any other time can reference Richard Wright is okay by me. When Hunter, I said, did Hunter just say Richard Wright? You mentioned Richard Wright to me. You earned some bonus points, especially doing it in Black History Month. I love that. When we come forward, our remaining moments with Hunter Walker and Lupe B. Lupin, I want to ask Lupe whether or not, given that Hunter just mentioned Ben Crump, whether or not into the future, vis-a-vis the Democratic Party, whether or not economic or social justice is going to hold primacy at the top of the Democratic agenda. They're intertwined, but they're not the same thing. Economic or social justice at the top of the Democratic agenda when we talk about its future. We'll do that when we come forward in our remaining moments with the authors of The Truce, Hunter Walker and Lupe B. Lupin on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy and turn everyday purchases into extraordinary trips. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges where you just check in and chill out. Open up a world of possibilities with Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Lupe B. Lupin, what holds sway in the future of the Democratic Party? Economic justice or social justice?
That's a great question. It's one that the Democrats are constantly fighting over, and I wouldn't presume to be the absolute authority, but I think the lesson of our book is that social justice issues are also structural issues about who gets represented, who gets education, who's able to serve in Congress, and what votes they're able to win, and that solving social justice issues is part of building the base to solve economic justice issues, at least as I see it. You look at how the Biden coalition was put together, and they were able to defeat Donald Trump, and they were able to pass a lot of legislation, but we also cover in our book how frustrated they were, both trying to get civil rights and voting rights legislation passed, and also in moving economic justice measures through as well. We see the structural problems in the Senate. We see the difficulty with the filibuster, the difficulty of moving things through the courts. And so it's probably an unsatisfying answer, but you have to have an all-of-the-above approach if you want to do either. You have to have economic justice and social justice be making progress, and I don't think either one is dispensable.
Hunter, you get the last word with about 90 seconds to go here. Our democracy is fragile. There's no question about it. We are on the precipice of something, and every empire in the history of the world, according to my study, has at some point a reckoning. Joe Biden understands that. He's making the point that this election is about the future of this very democracy. I close by asking not whether or not our democracy is fragile, but how fragile the Democratic Party is.
Well, the story that we've told in The Truce, which takes you behind the scenes of conversations with Barack Obama, Bernie Sanders, the Biden White House, and others, shows that, the alliance, the coalition that's holding the party together is an extremely fragile one. And as I said, we've got an identity crisis in the party as we're facing an identity crisis in the nation. And, I would say if you agree that the country is at a dangerous point, then you understand how much the debates, characters, and overall health of the opposition party is a really important thing to understand. And I hope readers will find that our book helps them do that like no other.
The book is a riveting account, I can assure you, an amazing account, a polemic, frankly, on the recent past, present, and future of the Democratic Party. The book is called The Truce: Progressives, Centrists, and the Future of the Democratic Party. Its authors are two distinguished journalists, Hunter Walker and Lupe B. Lupin, who I've been delighted, honored, in fact, to have on this program. Hunter, all the best to you. Thanks for your time, man. Take care of yourself.
Thanks so much for having me.
My great delight. Lupe, thanks for having giving us some time today. I appreciate you, man. All the best to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. It really was an honor to be on.
Thank you both. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa